So, picture this. In just 1 week, a 30-year-old crypto billionaire goes from being called the next JP Morgan to being accused of one of the biggest financial frauds in American history. This is the wild story of Sam Bankman-Fried. To really get how a $32 billion empire could just poof, vanish into thin air, we've got to understand the man at the center of it all.
So how on earth does the guy hailed as the Michael Jordan of crypto end up being called the devil in nerds clothing? It's just a crazy contrast, right? On one side, you've got this philanthropic genius, and on the other, the face of a historic financial collapse. To figure out how this happened, we have to go back and look at the incredibly powerful myth that he built around himself.
Okay, so first, it all starts with building the perfect myth. See, Sam Bankman-Fried, or SBF, he didn't just sell a crypto exchange. No, he sold a story about himself. A story that made millions of people, including celebrities and Wall Street veterans, trust him with their money. Now, the philosophy that gave SBF his moral halo was something called effective altruism. He was actually introduced to this whole movement by its co-founder, William McCaskill. And get this, McCaskill convinced him that the best way to do good wasn't to, go work for a charity, but to get filthy rich for charity. The strategy was called earning to give, and let me tell you, for a world that's pretty tired of greedy billionaires, this was the perfect story. And boy, did he sell this narrative perfectly. In interviews, he'd constantly talk about giving away his entire fortune, saying he had no interest in luxury or yachts or any of that stuff. This quote really shows you exactly how he positioned himself as the anti-billionaire. He was just in it to make the world a better place. And people, they really wanted to believe it. The persona was just as important as the philosophy. I mean, this was not your typical CEO in a fancy suit. It was this nerdy guy with famously messy hair who lived in shorts and a t-shirt and supposedly slept on a beanbag at work. He drove a Toyota Corolla. Every little detail was designed to make him seem authentic, relatable, and most importantly, not obsessed with money. And it worked, and made people trust him. And while SBF looked like he didn't care about money, he was spending an absolute fortune. FTX went on this epic marketing blitz. We're talking about putting their name on the Miami Heat's arena, sponsoring huge esports teams, and becoming the official crypto exchange of Major League Baseball. They signed up A-list celebrities like Tom Brady and Steph Curry. They even got the famous crypto skeptic Kevin O'Leary on board. This wasn't just advertising. It was a massive campaign to make FTX feel safe, mainstream, and totally inevitable. Okay, so that was the myth that everyone saw. But behind the curtain, well, that's where the engine of deception was running, and it was all built on the hidden relationship between his two key companies. So on paper, SBF's empire had two distinct parts. On one side, you have FTX, the crypto exchange. You can think of it like a bank, right? A place where you deposit your money to trade. Then on the other side, you have Alameda Research, his private trading firm. Now, that was supposed to be making risky bets with its own capital. These were meant to be totally separate. Spoiler alert, they weren't. So how did the whole scheme work? Well, it was basically built on what you could call magical internet money. Step 1, FTX creates its very own crypto token, FTT. Step 2, they and Alameda just keep most of those tokens for themselves. Then, by just assigning a super high value to these tokens, they essentially printed billions of dollars in assets on their balance sheet, out of thin air. And here's the final critical step. Alameda then used those FTT tokens, which had very little real-world backing, as collateral to borrow billions of dollars in actual cash. And believe it or not, there were huge red flags years before the collapse. Back in 2018, there was an event known as the April Fiasco at Alameda Research. The co-founder, Tara McCauley, and almost half the staff, they just quit. They cited SBF's reckless management and this belief he had that the rules just didn't apply to him. These warnings were even raised within the effective altruism community, but somehow nobody listened. So for years, the myth held strong and the deception went totally unnoticed. But then, in November of 2022, the whole house of cards came crashing down in 1 week of total, unbelievable chaos. And the collapse happened with just breathtaking speed. It all started with a single crack on November 2nd, a leaked report that revealed Alameda was basically built on a foundation of its own FTT token. That one little crack caused an earthquake. Just 4 days later, the rival CEO, CZ of Binance, tweets that he's selling all his FTT, which just triggers a massive panic. Within 48 hours, FTX is facing a full-blown bank run, forcing SBF to go beg that same rival for a bailout. But after just one day of looking at the books, Binance backed out. By November 11th, the entire $32 billion empire was gone. Bankruptcy. And this is the number at the heart of the crime. As the walls were closing in, the world learned that an estimated $10 billion in FTX customer money, the money people thought was totally safe in their accounts, had been secretly funneled over to Alameda to cover its risky bets. The bank wasn't a bank. It was a piggy bank for SBF's personal hedge fund. So after the bankruptcy filing, investigators moved in to pick through the wreckage. And the damning evidence they uncovered was, well, it was even worse than anyone could have possibly imagined. This quote just says it all. The guy they hired to clean up the mess was John J. Ray III. This is the same guy who handled the Enron bankruptcy, one of the most infamous corporate frauds in history. And even he was shocked, saying he had never seen anything this bad. When the guy who cleaned up Enron is horrified, you know it's a disaster of epic proportions. The findings were just staggering. Investigators found that FTX, a $32 billion company, had no accounting department, none. They used software specifically to hide the misuse of customer funds. They gave Alameda a secret exemption that let it borrow infinitely. They used corporate funds to buy $300 million worth of luxury homes. And to top it all off, the senior executives were all communicating with auto-deleting apps, and once the whole scheme collapsed, SBF's closest allies pleaded guilty and turned against him. Now, you'd think someone at the center of all this would probably go silent, right? Get some lawyers, hide out. But Sam Bankman-Fried, he did the exact opposite. Against all legal advice, he went on this bizarre media tour, giving interviews to major news outlets from his penthouse in the Bahamas, admitting to mistakes, but repeatedly denying he ever intended to commit fraud. I mean, the lack of remorse was just stunning. Which brings us to the final and kind of unsettling part of this whole story. Many sources suggest that the collapse of FTX isn't just an isolated event, but a massive warning sign of systemic risks that are still very much present in the crypto industry today. When you compare FTX to Binance, which is the world's largest crypto exchange, the source material points out some pretty worrying parallels. Does it have its own token that's used to prop up its value? Yep, both do. Is it tied to a private trading firm? Yes. Does it face a ton of regulatory issues and questions about transparency? Again, yes. Look, the point here isn't that these companies are identical. It's that the same volatile ingredients that allowed the FTX disaster to happen, a native token, these opaque links to private trading firms, and intense regulatory scrutiny, well, they might be simmering in a pot right at the very center of the crypto industry. And this is the lingering question that just hangs over the entire industry. The FTX story is about way more than just one man's greed. It exposed these deep-seated vulnerabilities in the crypto world. Regulators called FTX a walking time bomb. So the uncomfortable question we're all left with is how many more are still out there, just ticking away?